Hey, this is Carrie. Welcome to Springfield. Here for another review or two. I have actually two lined up for today because I just felt like it. I did a couple of apocalyptic back-to-back movies. One of them is The Silence, and the other one is I Am Legend. Now, before I begin with I Am Legend, I realize it's not a Netflix movie, but it's a movie that I've had so many people requesting me to watch, like, oh, you've got to see this movie, it's a great movie. And so it was on Netflix, and I was like, hey, I'll go ahead and check it out. There it is. I had just watched The Silence, and then I was like, hey, it's kind of apocalyptic, whatever, post-apocalyptic, and I'm really into that sort of crap, Mad Max, Waterworld, or whatever. It's just my scene. I'm gonna go ahead and start with I Am Legend just because it is what it is. It was the last one that I watched, and it's a little more fresh in my mind. First things first, I don't like zombie movies. I realize that there's tons of them. There are some good ones, like Shaun of the Dead was funny, and everyone loves Night of the Living Dead, which I think I've only seen a few minutes of it. But I mean, people coming back to life and this whole like worship and like excitement and love and passion that people have over corpses, I just don't get. I mean, anyone that's goes to a cadaver lab or there's just like, oh yeah, I mean, are you excited when you go to the cemetery? I mean, let's just get real, okay? People don't really want to see corpses. I mean, they think that it's entertaining, but it's gross. It's gross, and this obsession with death over having a passion and an obsession with light or life, light, yeah, well, life, whatever. Typically, if I know something's a zombie movie, I'm 9.9 times out of 10 I'm not going to watch it, I'm not going to read it, I'm just not interested. But I didn't realize that, and I started up watching this movie, and I realized pretty quickly, oh my god, sorry, there's some dog barking outside. It's this is going to be a zombie movie. But luckily they didn't have like just tons and tons, like they were just trying to show the zombie gore. So I did appreciate that it wasn't just like, trying to gross me out. I'm not watching Saw or Buzzsaw, whatever. So I did appreciate that they kind of toned down on that. So they have the whole, Will Smith stars in it, and his character has this dog, and they're stuck in this city where there's, I think it's like the island of Manhattan or something, and there's no one else there except for him and like a butt ton of zombies, and he's been there for 3 years. So all he's had is a relationship with his dog. So he talks to him like it's his buddy, and it makes sense, and it's kind of cool. I like that. The relationship between the two of them is really cool. And fun, and you really feel for the dog, especially when the dog dies. You're like, oh man, even me. I mean, I've been attacked by a dog, so I'm not all like, oh yay dogs, but I mean, even I felt for the dog. So I mean, if that's saying anything. So in the movie, they have a theme about God, not like right away, but a little later on in the movie. This lady and her son come and kind of rescue the main character, and after the dog's gone, and they kind of like fill in the gap for like the last half hour of the movie or whatever. And but she's basically like, well, I'm here because God told me to be here, and she's like, you need to listen to God's voice. And it was pretty cool because I mean, God came out as the hero at the end, that he rather than being like, there's just a lot of anti-God, anti-Jesus, like hope and light and stuff like that, and it's just refreshing to for those of us that are Christians, or those of us that even just believe in God, to not just have that bashed, just slap you in the face with every single word that comes out of an actor's mouth, and like 95% of movies that come out today. So it is, that was pretty cool, and then the payoff of that, God really had, spoken to her to go and meet with this guy, and eventually, bring the cure to get rid of the zombies and all that stuff. So it was pretty cool. So that was a cool payoff. The things I didn't really like about the movie, there were a lot of inconsistencies. Like, at one point, he's got to close all the shutters in the house with these, like, metal grates and stuff, and he goes to bed. And then when he wakes up, of course, he wakes up with the sunlight was already, like, trickling into the room and stuff, and it's just like, well, how is that possible? I mean, if you close the shutters and he's asleep, and then when he wakes up, I mean, they weren't, like, powered. Like, he has to manually shut these things, and you see him, you never really see him opening them in the morning, or maybe you do at some point, but there's one, like, one of the main scenes where he wakes up and the windows are open, the light, like you see in this, where the light's coming in through the window over there, and it's just like, well, wait a minute, if the window's closed and he was asleep, then the zombies, because they would have gotten in, or they would have, what, I don't know, so that just gets a little confusing. But if you can just kind of pretend like that didn't happen, maybe you'll be okay. Later on, when the woman and the boy sort of join him, and he's sort of passed out, and when he wakes up, they make eggs and bacon for him, which is pretty nice. They don't know him, but they rescued him, and they're making him, a nice hot breakfast. And he's like, man, I saved those eggs and bacon. And I was just like, he's been on this island for 3 years, but he was saving the bacon. And I'm like, how long does bacon last? Or eggs, for that matter. I mean, are there chickens outside? And I'm like, well, okay, maybe there's powdered eggs or something like that. But, I mean, how long are you going to save that bacon? I mean, even in the freezer, it's only going to last so long. I'm just a little worried about that. Like, he's saving it for a rainy day. I mean, there is also another part where the woman and the boy, when they show up, and you haven't actually met them yet, but there's this huge light, like a light bomb or something, that just wipes out all the zombies that are, like, just about to, like, bite off, Will Smith's head. And they never explain it. They never say, hey, oh, by the way, we had this, like, flash bomb that I just happened to have. There's no information about it. They don't refer back to it. He doesn't go, oh my god, did you see that big ass light? No, there's nothing. There's nothing. He's just like, whatever. Like, oh, well, we saved you. And he's like, oh, man, I was, like, trying to die, and it's just like, really? Like, what about the flash bomb? I'm curious about that. I mean, no little subtext saying, oh, by the way, it's something else. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah, one thing that I thought was really stupid early on. So apparently, they keep going into these flashbacks back when, 3 years before all this happened, where he had a wife and a kid, and I guess they die. You don't find that out right away, but they had died in this crazy accident, right as everyone's trying to flee the city. And Will Smith's daughter, Marla, who is apparently named after Bob Marley, who I guess is this like iconic figure for him. I don't know who wrote her lines, but I realize when kids are young, they're not as intelligent as adults, obviously, and they don't really say the brightest things. But whoever wrote her lines, I mean, there's cops, there's people dying, there's screams, there's terror, her parents are freaking out, and she's just like, oh, I love the color purple, oh, Dad, look, a butterfly, and it's just like, oh my god. I'm like, no, I think that, even young children, when there's something terribly wrong, they're not morons. If something's creepy in the room or the darkness, they get scared. They're aware of, the situation around them, even if they can't understand it. But I mean, it wasn't like until, oh, you mean Daddy's not going with us? And then all of a sudden she's like, oh, I'm crying. And it's just like, oh, I just, but I don't blame her because she just did what she was told. So she did the best with, the lines that were given to her. And of course, later on, they do have the payoff for, why in the heck she said the thing about the butterfly over and over again. Oh, butterflies are pretty, Daddy. Oh, look at this. So later on, they're like, oh, he starts seeing butterflies at the end of the movie, and then it's supposed to, mean that God's talking to him, which I'm just like, God could just talk to him. I mean, God talks to me. I mean, he talks to all of us. Just whether or not you listen, like the chick said. But whatever. They wanted to have that weird, like, visual payoff. Which, I mean, the visual part of the payoff with the glass and it's, like, in the shape of a butterfly or whatever. That was cool. But I wish they could have done it in a different way. Like, had the girl drawing, or not just kind of like saying all this stupid butterfly and talking about stuff that, when she should obviously be, upset because her parents are upset and because the world just seems to be going down, the toilet and stuff. I mean, I just can't, I don't know. Anyway, scenes in the movie that were awkward. So, like, before he meets the woman, like, all the stuff that leads to, like, his dog dying and all that has to do with these stupid mannequins, which for some reason he goes to this, like, video store or CD store or something every few days and just pretends like he's renting one, and then he puts it back and he gets another one, and then puts it back and gets another one, and it's like, oh, that's all cute, which is fine, but I don't know if those mannequins were already there, but I think he found them and put them in the store, in this, like, video rental shop, so that when he would go in there, he'd feel like he was, with people, I guess. But I mean, especially when there's nobody, when you're in this huge area, this city, and it is completely and utterly deserted except for these monsters that only come out at night. Talking to mannequins is creepy. And so there's this one later on scene where it's supposed to be sentimental. His dog just died, he's all upset, and he goes and he's just trying to sort of bare his heart to this mannequin lady, and it is just creepy as crap. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm waiting for her to just suddenly like eat his head off. I mean, it's scarier than the zombies. And I'm like, they should have just made a movie with a guy at a place that's deserted like that, only there is no zombies, and he's just talking to mannequins, and the mannequins come alive and kill him at the end. I mean, that would be creepy as crap. That would make Slender Man look like... Well, Slender Man wasn't a very good movie either, so let's not compare it to that. Anyway. Another scene that, I don't know if they're going for creepy, but it's just awkward, is the Shrek scene. Apparently, he's had the movie Shrek, that he must have watched like 1,000 times, even though he has that video rental store he goes to. He only watches Shrek, and he has the entire thing memorized, because, he doesn't go out all day and do stuff before he gets in and goes to sleep. So the awkwardness comes in when he sits there and the boy with the woman is watching Shrek, and he just awkwardly walks in, stares at the screen, and the mom just kind of walks in to make sure that he's not, like, going crazy or something. So, he starts just saying the same lines as the movie, and he says them right at the right timing, with the right, enunciation and everything, and he's just like, and I guess, and they do it for a really long time, and you're just going there, like, you're just going around, you're just like, please stop, Will, just stop. Okay, I get it, you've watched this movie a lot, ha ha ha, just stop, and it just keeps going and going and going until you're like, I just think I'll kind of go to the bathroom while you finish up that scene. And though I understand that, you know, that's supposed to be a sign of his insanity as well or whatever. But I mean, how many of you haven't done the same thing where you've memorized sections or passages of film that, you know, you can quote them off and get the cadence just right and everything? I mean, or maybe I'm just the geek here, but I don't think that makes you crazy. I think that just makes you incredibly bored, or maybe just an incredibly boring person. Pretty much the long and short of I Am Legend. I mean, in some parts of it, you know, really well done, really interesting, and other parts of it, you know, just a lot of plot holes, a lot of awkwardness. You know, and with the whole, like, the whole mannequin thing, like, it just feels like half the time he's completely got his grasp on reality, and he's just fine. He's got his dog, he's doing his Will Smith thing, which is fine, but then all of a sudden he's like, you know, I'm talking to mannequins, you know, his mannequin gets stolen and put somewhere else, and he just flips out, and I'm like, they should have more of that in the film, because that's, I guess, what the character's supposed to be like, and not just supposed to be like Will Smith from, you know, Independence Day, which that's a really good movie too. You should check that one out. Now we have The Silence, Netflix original, came out this week. I was like, hey, this looks fun. Actually, the first thing that grabbed me was it had Stanley Tucci in it, who is, you know, a really underappreciated actor. I really like him. I mean, he's a nice looking older guy, but he's also has sort of a refined, you know, air about him, and he actually does a really good job. And he tends to always get thrown into like the asshole role, like the corporate asshole or something, and like he was in The Core, and I have that movie, and you know, he plays some snooty professor, and he's like, I know what I'm doing, you know, and then he gets, you know, he gets his in the end and all. And I just feel like they always kind of throw some actors in the crappy roles, or the bad guy roles, and then like the guys that are a little more younger, pretty boy or whatever, then they're of course the pretty guys, and the nice guys, the ugly guys are bad guys, and it's just like, you know, is that in real life? You know, you know, at my job, there's, you know, nice looking guys, and they're assholes, you know, and then there's, like, you know, guys that are ugly, and they're still assholes, but that's beside the point. You know, just judging people by how they look is pretty stupid. But I liked him in The Core, and I liked him in he was in Midsummer Night's Dream, which he played Puck, which is, I actually named the first car I ever owned and bought myself Puck. So it's a really crappy car, but hey, it is what it is. So the story's about these, like, creatures that are kind of like bats or something, and I guess they've been stuck underground for hundreds of years or a few thousand years or something. So they're blind, but they have excellent hearing, and they have wings, and they just can eat. Like, I mean, they just flock and eat and kill. I mean, that's all they do through the whole movie. And so they basically killed off the majority of the population of the world in the matter of like a few weeks. Anyway, this family escapes, and the family's daughter, like, some years before, had gone deaf in an accident. And so everyone in the family, to, you know, communicate with her, learns sign language. So because everyone can't make a sound, even talking is bad, so it's just kind of cool playing on, you know, disability or something like that. So because she's disabled, her whole family can communicate perfectly in sign language, you know. But the girl does a really good job. In fact, all the actors and actresses do a great job. I mean, totally, you know, suspension of disbelief and all that. Enjoyable movie. Unlike I Am Legend, there weren't like awkward scenes that should have been sentimental, or awkward scenes that you just didn't want to be there. they didn't fit really the movie, the flow. And this one, when they had like awkward scenes, it worked with it because you have like, you know, the crazy bat things that are killing they call them vesps. So the vesps are killing everyone, and the CGI is, you know, really good. I mean, you're never really going to be able to make it perfect with CGI because, I mean, our eyes, God made our eyes like so incredible that, you know, no amount of computing, I mean, you're always going to be able to tell that's real and that's fake. At least as far as when you take a film that's, you know, has real, you know, outside trees and real people and all that, and then you put something else that's not really there, and you try to get the lighting right. And I mean, they do an incredible job, and they do a good job. You know, it looks real. It looks good enough. It looks like it's really there. But it, you know, CGI will always be, you know, one step behind God. It's just not gonna catch up. You know. Okay, so the awkward scenes. While they're passing through the town, this priest guy walks up to them and starts communicating with them by, you know, writing in a book. And he's like, do you want to join the Church of the Hush? Like, meaning be quiet, you know, because if anyone talks, these things come and kill you. And they're like, no thank you. And then he like has this weird scene where he like, I'm trying to find a picture of it, but I guess they didn't want to spoil it or whatever. But he like smiles, and then he opens up his mouth and like grimaces, and he's like cut off his tongue. And you find out that everyone in his little church has cut off their tongue to be able to, you know, make sure they don't say something. But he comes back and he tries to get the daughter to do, or he tries to steal the daughter, basically, the deaf girl, because they're like, oh, she's fertile. And so, you know, but as far as like being creepy at the right time, you know, he was creepy, and he was creepy at the right time. And yet it kind of reminded me of like scenes like in War of the Worlds. I don't know why that's so hard to say. World. I think we just say World War too many times. And War of the Worlds, the remake, where he's like traveling with his daughter, and then he goes, that guy lets him, Tim Robbins lets him stay in their house, and then he's gonna like take the girl or something, and it just gets like really creepy really quick, and then he basically beats him up and they get out of there. It's like just creepy scenes like that where it's I think they do the same crap in the 28 Days Later, where they get to the it feels like a whole different movie. In that movie, it was like two movies: the creepy castle scene and all the creepy stuff leading up to it. I mean, as far as the pacing, like, it felt right, and adding that like extra layer of conflict where it's like, you know, you think people would band together, but rather than banding together, they're, you know, fighting and sabotaging each other, and it brings an extra intenseness where it's not just like, you know, these things, we're just going to sit around and be quiet for the rest of the movie, which a lot of the movie is quiet, but, you know, they got music and stuff, so. Now with, like, I Am Legend, it would get, like, I was watching it late at night, and I didn't want to bother my neighbors. And so I'd have, like, the volume turned down when the music would come on. It'd be really loud, action scene, whoa! And then it would go, and then they'd talk, and they'd be like, oh, how you doing? Oh, yeah, well, we gotta do this, and well, we gotta, and I'm like, I was like, beep, 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 beep. I'm like, what did you say? And then you gotta rewind it. You know, okay, what did he say? I'm like, oh, he just said, hey, what's up? Good morning. I'm like, okay, well, you know, and then the music came back, ah, you know, and then boom, it's quiet again. Everyone's just kind of mumbling or whatever, and it's. I think my only major dislike of the silence would be the fact that, you know, whenever you have a religious character, you know, or a spiritual character, it's always got to be demonized. You know, all of us Christians, we're not all, you know, Mormons from Brigham Young era. I mean, we don't, I swear we're not all creeps. We don't cut off our tongue. We don't make creepy churches. for a long time, our world has been, at least in America, has been, a Christian nation. And, now we're on the flip side. We're like, people nowadays, like, I'm afraid to say anything because, I just don't feel comfortable with it. I'm afraid that someone's just going to be like, give me the cold shoulder or walk away or be mean to me, or they'll be like, well, let's have this big argument about it. And it's just like, oh my gosh, I'm just here to do my job and go home. Like, if nothing I say is going to convince you and nothing you say is going to convince me, then maybe we should like go do something else. Because until one of us is ready to like really listen and receive from the other, then we're pretty much wasting our breath. All in all, I mean, like, spiritually, I'd have to give, I Am Legend quite a bit more stars. As far as just enjoying a movie and it just kind of like being a good cocktail, just mixed and done just right, I'd have to say The Silence. Although I guess there probably was a lot more involved in I Am Legend, with all the different layers involved in that, with his like craziness and his saneness, his relationship with his dog, with his family and all the stuff that he's going through, and then the whole location and plot and all that stuff. So, and maybe I'd appreciate it more if I saw it again, but I don't really think I'd see it again. However, I might watch The Silence again, depending on whether or not I'm just feeling in the groove or in the vesp or whatever. Anyway, peace out. I do want to make one quick aside. Netflix movies tend to have like certain types of endings because lots of them are, I'm not going to say independent films, but especially earlier on in Netflix life when it had gone from just being a male thing. When it became streaming, they had all these weird movies that came out, and they were just unique in that it was kind of like watching Japanese anime. Or like stories or movies from other countries where they don't have the underdog beats, the big tough guy. It's not the typical American ending. And that kind of made them interesting because you never really knew where the story was going or how it was going to end until literally the end, where you find out, oh, these people have been dead the entire time. And they've had movies like that, for like Hollywood movies like that over the years, where you're like, oh my god, what's his name, does that Midnight Shyamalan or whatever, and which is fine, but we're kind of used to it from him, so we look for what's the catch, like a bad salesman or something. What are you trying to sell me? And we already know that you're just gonna do like bait and switch with us, Shyamalan. So just like, yo. But with Netflix movies, half of them, they, have the whole happy ending and everything like that. So, with The Silence, especially, it was cool to actually have some kind of, it almost felt like it was ending in like sort of a Hunger Games type feel. The girl out there with the bow and arrow and all that stuff. And I was like, oh man, catnip is back. So, I don't know. It's just interesting. I'm always curious how they're going to end different, especially Netflix movies, because you just never know. It makes it more interesting. So, anyway, just a shout out on Netflix endings. There you go.